Hi, it's Dwyer. It is May 18th, 2025. Let's talk about Dave Allen's victory over Johnny Fisher. Right? You know my feeling. There's the heavyweight division, and then there's everything else. There's the heavyweight champ, and then there's everyone else. Right? This was a heavyweight dust up. You need to look at both men. Right? Allen, 33 years old, still has a lot of runway ahead of him, especially in this heavyweight division, where there are a lot of sluggers, where there are a lot of guys who are going to be lulled into trading with Allen, and that Allen right hand is special. Let's talk about it, but first remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, I've read a lot of comments on earlier videos. Folks, we're watching two different sports, right? If this referee were the referee for the Usyk-Dubois fight, Dubois would have won that fight. Right here you have several belt line punches, several, from Johnny Fisher. Right, folks? They're indistinguishable, quite frankly, from the belt line shot that Dubois hit Usyk with. Right now, I don't, understand. Well, let's just say I'm glad those two guys are fighting again. But for those of you who have a different view of what's a low blow, please look at this fight. Fisher figures out that he can lean in and throw left hooks to the body. Right? Then he starts throwing them with regularity. It's one of his best punches in the fight. He throws it a number of times. Folks, all of them are around the belt line. All of them. Now, fans in boxing, we all have different ideas. All of us, myself included, think we can referee. From my side of the street, those punches were legitimate. Now, let me just say, in the fifth round, the infamous round, one of the announcers actually disagrees with the other one and said that he thought all of the punches were low. Right? We need to continue to have that discussion so that we don't have more Usyk-Dubois matches. Right? Let's figure out things. This is not the first fight, not by a long stretch. In fact, this isn't the first fight since the Usyk fight, where I saw a guy throw a punch that lands around the belt and the ref accepted it. Right? Jay Obitaya knocked out a guy in a fight where he hit the guy in the body. It was one of the key punches. Of course, Obitaya then came up top, but the point is, the fight wasn't stopped. It wasn't a low blow. We need to figure out what a low blow is. Now, let me say this. In boxing, you have some great interviews. Some guys who tell it like it is, can actually talk with the interviewer, make observations that are actually relevant to fans looking to get an edge on the casino. Now, before this fight, Dave Allen, who's friends outside the ring with Johnny Fisher, right? Dave Allen, who could have been awarded the first fight, right? The first fight's close. Let's just say Allen clearly comes back in that fight, right? We can debate the first fight. But just understand, Allen, who knows Fisher, who had fought Fisher as a pro already, was talking about Fisher before this fight. And he talked about how Fisher was a great athlete. A great athlete. And you see it, right? He's a big man. He has an explosive right hand. He's coordinated. But Allen continued. And Allen said that he wasn't a great fighter. Now, folks, I was raised during the Larry Holmes era, right? The great ones make hard things look incredibly easy. Larry Holmes, much better feet than Johnny Fisher, right? It's embarrassing talking about Larry Holmes's feet in the same conversation as Johnny Fisher's feet. But interestingly, and keep in mind, Allen's shorter than Johnny Fisher. Fisher's a tall guy. Larry Holmes against an opponent like Dave Allen would be peppering him with jabs. And it would be a mobile jab. In other words, Larry's not standing in front of him. We all know Allen can punch. Larry would be moving. Allen would be turning. If Allen's going to get off that lethal right hand of his, he would have to be able to have his feet ready so that as he turned, he's able to then turn over the punch. There'd be a timing element to Allen throwing that right hand. Right? Larry would be a moving target. In other words, Allen couldn't think about the right hand and then come closer and still think about the right hand and still have the same angle. Well, and of course, Allen, as he tried to get closer to Larry Holmes, would be dealing with that Larry Holmes jab. Right? It's like a jackhammer. Holmes didn't have to throw any other punches. Holmes could bludgeon you with the jab to the point where by the time Holmes started throwing right hands, the fight was effectively over. Now here it's interesting. In my opinion, one man's opinion, Johnny Fisher is better as a counterpuncher than he is a lead puncher. Right, folks, you're not dealing with Rocky Marciano here. Right, so let me just say this. It's fascinating that the taller man, with Dave Allen, with his hands down. Right, Dave's not fighting the whole fight, hiding behind his hands and stuff like that. No, Dave is in against puncher. Look at the highlights on Johnny Fisher. Look at the knockout percentage on Johnny Fisher. Dave Allen knows Johnny Fisher. This is why you don't fight guys who know you. This is why Gervonta Davis is making a mistake fighting Lamont Roach again. Just like Fisher made a mistake fighting Dave Allen again. Hey, man, they gave you the first fight, run and hide. The interviewer brings up Dave Allen's name. You say, hey, I fought him already. You know that. Right? The heavyweight division's deep. I'm fighting other guys. Why do you fight someone who knows you? So if anyone knows that Johnny Fisher can't lead with power shots, it's Dave Allen. Folks, this fight starts, Dave Allen's hands are low. It's not even like Dave Allen's Manny Pacquiao. He's not Joe Frazier. He's not moving his head. He's not bobbing and weaving. He's not doing things where even a guy with a pinpoint jab might actually have to think about how to find him. No, Dave Allen has his hands down, and he's right in front of Johnny Fisher. Now, that would have been fatal if you were fighting Larry Holmes, right? Larry Holmes's jab had GPS on it. Right? The great jabbers can find you with their jabs. Right? Larry Holmes would have been pulverizing this shorter opponent. You would have been thinking about things you didn't have to think about here, like reach. Right? You'd say, Larry has that reach. Larry has a short guy in front of him. He's just going to bust him up. And of course, the judges are going to have no choice. They're going to see one guy landing jab after jab after jab. Then when the bell rings, they're going to say, who won that round? Certainly not the short guy who doesn't have quick feet, who's not jumping in the pocket. No one's going to confuse Dave Allen with Prime Tyson. But understand, he had a Johnny Fisher in front of him. Now, Fisher's dangerous if you're a lead against Fisher. But Dave Allen was savvy. He had a great strategy. Boxing's a craft. Dave Allen's low volume against the guy who can't lead. So Fisher comes out, he's looking like Shannon Briggs a little bit, right? He's moving his hands, trying to confuse the opponent. But then you understood there was no jab behind it. Then Fisher tries to jab a little bit. It's not like Dave Allen's moving his head out of the way or anything. He's standing there. He has his hands low. Johnny Fisher in this fight shows you how hard it is to throw an accurate jab. Don't be fooled sitting on your sofa watching guys who, know how to jab, right? Watching Tyson Fury, right? You see Tyson Fury, he's throwing jabs. You're thinking, man, I can get off the sofa and throw those jabs. No, you can't. Exhibit number 1 is this fight. Where are Fisher's jabs, right? You see him try to throw jabs, no force behind them whatsoever, and this guy's a puncher. Right, Johnny Fisher, let's just say he might be a great athlete outside the ring. Maybe he beats all of us in a decathlon outside the ring. In the ring, his legs were wooden. In the ring, they tell you on the telecast, one of the announcers at the beginning of the second round says Fisher can't fight inside. Right, in the ring, wooden legs, he's not going to be confused with Larry Holmes anytime soon. Right, he might be a great athlete. Maybe he beats Larry in a decathlon. He wouldn't come close to beating Larry in a boxing match. Right, Fisher can't land the jab. Fisher can't take a step forward and just start roughing you up inside. Right, Fisher can't even set the pace of the fight. Right, you have Dave Allen, he's there, he looks like he's waiting for the later rounds, right? That's when he excelled the first time. Right, he's not exerting himself that much. The crowd is more amped up than Dave Allen is. And Fisher couldn't, take that step forward and start throwing bombs. Right, no one watching this fight is going to confuse him with Fabio Wardley. Right now, by the way, because Fisher is more of a counter than a lead, and because Fabio Wardley pushes the envelope at times, that fight would be more interesting than this fight was. Well, more action-packed, maybe not more interesting. But here, Fisher's fighting a guy who knows him, who knows he's not a great boxer. So Dave Allen is saving himself. He's not overexerting himself. Right now, folks, we get to the 5th round. Let me ask a foundational question, because boxing is a sport that requires adjustments. Right? If I'm fighting Ajit Kabayel and he's going to my body, I've got to do something to prevent him from continuing to go to my body. Or I'm going to end up roadkill. Right, Makhmudov? Zhili Zhang. Right, both withered by body shots. Right now, what exactly did Johnny Fisher do in the 5th round to avoid Dave Allen's right hand? Right, we all know that's Allen's big punch. Right, as I like to say, as I've said in the past, if a guy beats you with his plan A, you weren't fully prepared. Right? Understand, Fisher goes down, Fisher gets back up. What's the punch that Allen hits him with to get the towel? Folks, it's another right hand. It's not like Allen has to change the plan, come in, fake the right hand, wait for Fisher to lift his hands to block the right, and then comes back with a slick left. No. Fisher, let's just say when he's hurt, he doesn't make adjustments. Right? This is your prototypical guy with better highlights than skills. Let me say this. You notice Allen is more fluid than Fisher. While Fisher's robotic, right? Again, he has a big punch. He's actually a decent counterpuncher. He has a hellacious right hand, right? But you notice Fisher, and he landed some great body shots in this fight. Shots that I thought, by the way, were legal. Just food for thought. But you notice that Fisher's wooden. He can't get up on his toes. He can't dance. He doesn't have the jab. The announcers in the fight tell you he can't fight inside, and he doesn't prove them wrong. Right? It's the second fight against Dave Allen, and Fisher hasn't figured out the angles. Right? You wouldn't have known that these guys fought before because he's getting hit flush with right hands. And of course, Allen does something really smart. He doesn't overdo it. You don't notice the big right hands until like the third or fourth round. Right? And Allen, in terms of moving his body, he has his hands down, but you notice as Fisher throws, Allen knows to move away. Allen knows to twist his body. Right? Allen is much more fluid than Johnny Fisher. So let me offer unsolicited advice to Eddie Hearn. Right? And let me say I'm biased in this direction already. Fisher just got brutally knocked out to the point where his corner threw in the towel. Right? To the point where, you see Allen looking at him. This was the kind of uncomfortable knockdown where, as people are celebrating, Allen sensed that he hit Fisher awfully hard. We, the viewers, are looking at Fisher, and this is one of those fights where when Fisher gets up, you're grateful. He got hit that hard. If I'm Eddie Hearn, I never fight Dave Allen again. Unless there's a situation where Allen has the belt and, I have to fight him to get the title. Or I have the belt and Allen's my mandatory, I never fight him again. Right? 18 months from now, we'll think back to these two and we'll say, well, they're 1-1. Right? The bottom line is the first fight could have gone either way. This fight could only have gone one way. Right? Fisher's dropped twice. Right? Folks, 5th round. We didn't even make it to the second half of the fight. Right? Fisher defensively challenged. If you know how to fight him. If you come in with volume, this is the anti-volume guy. You come in with volume and there's a shootout. Suddenly you're going to get straight right hands from Fisher. You have to be cerebral and come in like Allen with the idea of, I'm going to let this guy lead. Right? He's not comfortable leading with power shots. He's a guy who's throwing a very tepid left jab at you. Right? As long as he's doing that, given that the guy fell apart in the second half of the first fight, Dave Allen, very savvy, realized, hey, I'm going to let this go a few rounds because this guy's game degrades. It was interesting, too, because Allen's not doing much, but yet you notice Fisher's on his back foot a little bit. And let's face it, Fisher's back foot is not an educated back foot. Right? There's no time I looked at this fight where I thought, oh, he's reminding me of Usyk, right? you know I didn't have that thought. Right? This is the athletic guy who's still learning the craft of boxing. Right? Close to a non-existent jab. Couldn't use his height. Couldn't use his reach. Couldn't lead with power shots. Couldn't make defensive adjustments. right? This is a guy who's better served in shootouts than with cerebral opponents. Were he to fight Tyson Fury, I'm not sure if Fury would have to throw any punches other than his jab. Right? One guy would be using his height in that fight. It'd be Tyson Fury. Right? Fury would be throwing a jab, he'd be moving, and Fisher would be confused. And of course, you understand the great fighters, they always have that big punch ready. Right? If I'm battering you with a jab, it's only a matter of time before I come back with the right hand. Right? So, if I'm Eddie Hearn, given that Fisher could give some guys problems, right? But he needs a guy, he needs Jermaine Franklin. That's who he needs. Right? Some guy who doesn't have a big punch, who is going to be dipping and diving and coming in the pocket. Right? Fisher did hit Allen with some wicked body shots. A guy coming low in the pocket is tailor-made for Johnny Fisher, because Fisher can then throw some heavy body shots. Right? A guy who is offensive and coming at him is going to force him to fight. He can then throw the counters. He can then actually extend that right hand. Right? But if he's fighting a cerebral fighter who can look at him and actually take a step back, dare him to actually be the lead, right? You know, wait him out, right? You say, okay, Johnny Fisher, first round, I'm not going to allow him to throw powerful counters. Then you look at your watch and it's the fourth round. You say, okay, now I'm going to start throwing some right hands. And for some reason, Fisher by the fourth round isn't the same guy. Right? And Usyk would tear him apart, in my opinion. Also, you have the fact that Usyk's a lefty. Right? Too fluid. Right? Fisher is a guy who's a little bit too robotic. He's tailor-made for a cerebral guy who knows him and who understands what he can do and what he can't do. That's who he just fought in Dave Allen. Let me say this too. If I'm Dave Allen, unless my name's on a contract that obligates me for a third fight, I'm looking around the heavyweight division and I'm like, look, am I really going to spend 3 fights on this guy? Right? I'm looking around the heavyweight division and I'm thinking, man, you know, give me a shot on Daniel Dubois. Right? If he gets by Usyk. Right? Give me a shot on some of these other guys who are up and coming. Right? Jared Anderson. Give me a shot on him. Right? He's an athlete, but like Fisher, doesn't quite know what to do with the athleticism. Right? If I'm Dave Allen, unless they just throw so much money at me that I really have no choice, right? At 33, you can't pass up too many big paydays. But I would realize, you know, this heavyweight division, as deep as it is open. Right? Usyk's 38 years old, folks. Tyson Fury's not fighting. Daniel Dubois got knocked down multiple times by Kevin Lerena. Right? Where is the young Goliath in the room? A lot of guys need to prove themselves. Right? A lot of guys, you know, I just saw Effie Ajaba. He looked great against Martin Bacoli. Against Guido Vianello, that was a difficult fight. Right? Some heavyweights have good days and bad days. Right? Andy Ruiz didn't look that great against Jarrell Miller. If I'm Dave Allen, you know, I have the punch, I have the right hand. Now might be the time to test myself. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Fisher has some work to do against a Ricardo Torres, someone who's going to come forward and force the action and allow Fisher to hide his weaknesses, to be a reactive fighter rather than a lead. Fisher would probably do better than he did in this fight. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.